Oh, who are the people in your neighborhood, in your neighborhood, in your neighborhood? Say, who are the people in your neighborhood, the people that you meet each day? Well, there's Sue, who lives on Duncan, who makes the best chocolate chip cookies, and Murphy, who lives down the street and walks his owner Dave. And Little Boy the cat with extra digits on his paws is the resident mouser. There's the son who takes a walk around the block every day with his aging father. And there's Gary, who lives at St. Vincent's and wheels himself to sit under the maple tree in the front yard on Windsor to watch the passerby. And there is a middle-aged colored woman who runs back and forth between the church and the house, working in the garden, making public art, visiting on the front porch, entertaining conversation groups, and leading a walking group around the neighborhood. That's me, of course. Well, these are the people that you meet when you're walking down the street. They're the people that you meet each day. For decades, this song was used to introduce the people who lived and worked on Sesame Street. Sesame Street being a children's show with puppets and people. In a few minutes, we will return to the neighborhood that is home to this church community. But first, let us venture into the neighborhood presented to us in today's gospel. The neighborhood we visit is in the Samaritan city of Sychar. It's an old neighborhood where generation after generation have gathered and lived. For those living here, the water source is convenient, and at least once a day, every household comes to draw what they need. Legend has it that back in the day, the land where the neighborhood sits was given by Father Jacob to his favorite son, Joseph. The highlight of the neighborhood, the center feature, is a well, Jacob's well. The well is perpetually full of refreshing water as it's fed by a natural spring. This neighborhood doesn't seem to have its own food shops, or at least on this day there's no market, for the disciples have gone off to the next neighborhood, further into the city of Sychar, to buy food. Jesus, weary from travel, decides to sit at the well and take in the sights, smells, and sounds of this foreign to him neighborhood. It is important for us to note that Jesus is a visitor in this neighborhood, and likely an unwelcomed one, not being a Samaritan at all. Jesus chooses a very public and open-aired space to rest. A well is a place where travelers, even those who are considered not us, by the rules of desert hospitality, can stop for water. One of the neighborhood women ventures out about her business and finds Jesus at the well. The woman takes the risk and the time to speak with this visitor who's on her home turf. There's a whole discussion that goes on about water, living water, and quenching thirst. After quite the discussion, the woman runs to her neighbors to tell them about the visitor in their neighborhood. And as neighborhoods go, this one has a vast network of news-spreading agency. People are curious and come to meet this visitor, to hear and to see for themselves. So interesting is this visitor that someone either takes Jesus home with them or finds a local room in an inn. The conversation and the storytelling continue. Jesus stays in the neighborhood for 2 days. Who are the people in your neighborhood? Specifically, who are we? We as the Lutheran Church of the Resurrection. Are we, or could we be, the well of the neighborhood? A well perpetually full of life-giving, thirst-quenching, refreshing spring water. A neighborhood hub as people in the vicinity visit once a day to fill their thirst-quenching needs. an open-air public space where visitors feel welcome to rest, a community filled with curiosity to meet the visitor and neighbor, to bathe in conversation and storytelling, to welcome and find room for people to be housed and stay for a day or two or more. You can tell that being a neighborhood well is not just physical water for bodily thirst, but water in the form of connection and community through conversation, storytelling, welcome, and hospitality. Providing a safe place where people living their faith have the God-given ability to water the world, quenching loneliness, fear, hopelessness, mindlessness, boredom, anxiety, and the list goes on. Are we a well with that kind of thirst-quenching water? I'm currently reading a book called The Bees of Rainbow Falls, Finding Faith, Imagination, and Delight in Your Neighborhood by Preston Puteau. The book invites the reader, pastors, and congregations to discover their neighborhood. The author begins with bees, suggesting learning from them and taking delight in the small. Again and again, readers are directed to go into their neighborhood to see beauty, create beauty, be beauty. Beauty is a gift. Beauty is healing. Beauty is life-giving water. The book talks about people in the neighborhood and asks, if you were no longer in the neighborhood, would you be missed? Would this church community be missed? The author gives an example of a woman in the neighborhood who was known as the lady who wore green. That is the only color that she wore. The neighbors took great delight in her combinations of green layers and a certain creative flair that she had. And when she was gone, her daily travel through the neighborhood wearing green, her presence was missed. The story of the neighborhood in Sychar would have been very different without one of the women in the neighborhood going out and meeting Jesus at the well. Without the neighborly action, Jesus would have remained physically thirsty from his journey, and the woman and her neighbors would have been less emotionally and spiritually fulfilled. Thinking about being a well of life-giving water, or a neighbor who takes risk and time to talk with the neighborhood visitor and inviting neighbors to come and see, is this not only what church community could be, but what it is to be? In this time of transition, let our fears be quenched with living water, a water that is perpetually refreshed, water to overflow into the neighborhood through us. As neighbor, let us take risks, talking to visitors, strangers, and neighbors. Let us discover the neighborhood and delight in the small. And let us grow and water beauty in the fabric of the neighborhood for the healing of the neighborhood and the world. Amen.